Hello, everyone. Welcome to Food Integrity Now. I'm Carol Grave and the host of the show. And I'm just thrilled to have back on the show today Zen Honeycutt of Moms Across America. As you know, she's been on my show many times, and she always has great information to share. And this time, we're going to be talking with Zen about some recent testing that Moms Across America initiated. They tested gluten-free foods, and they tested them for glyphosate and AMPA, 236 pesticides,
Yes.
mineral content, and for gluten. And I think the results were just astonishing. I don't even know if that's the right word, but I'll let Zen take it from here, and we'll start with some of those results. Zen?
Thank you for having me on, Carol, and always being committed to getting the truth out to people to restore food integrity, as your show is called. Because without integrity, nothing works. And
Right.
we all need food. Doesn't matter what your religious or political background is. We all need food. We need food to be healthy and safe. And so that's why we tested gluten-free food, because so many people now are turning to gluten-free food. I have personal friends of mine that have said, Zen, I'm eating organic and gluten-free, and I still have gut issues. I have anxiety. I have depression. I have, rashes, whatever why am I not getting better? And I said, you know what? I think the gluten-free food might have glyphosate in it, because we know many of the ingredients in gluten-free foods, such as chickpeas, or oats or peas or beans or lentils, things that aren't wheat, obviously, are sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent before harvest. So I was very concerned about, the levels of glyphosate in gluten-free foods, and talked to our board about it and team, and everybody was like, yeah, that's, we got to do that. So thank goodness to Leila and David Sentner at the Sentner Academy, who supported this work, and many of our Moms Across America supporters, because this information is extremely important for people who are just trying to recover their health, right? They just want to sort out what's going on in their gut microbiome. They want to be healthy. They want to be able to live a long, healthy life. And so we tested 46 samples of gluten-free food, and 44 out of 46 of them were positive for glyphosate.
Wow.
At concerning levels. Anything over 0.1 parts per billion is according to Dr. Don Huber, who is a 60-year plant pathologist, is concerning and something that should be avoided. And out of the 237 or 236 other pesticides we tested, but total of 237 pesticides, glyphosate was the highest, was the highest levels, was found the most often, and the highest levels. And 2,4-D was the second highest. And we're concerned that some farmers are switching from glyphosate to 2,4-D,
Yeah.
potentially as a drying agent or just in the use and killing off weeds.
Zen, just so our listeners who may not be familiar with 2,4-D, what can you say about that? Why do we need to be concerned about 2,4-D?
Well, you could probably say even more than I could about this. You've been doing this longer than I have, but what most people, first become aware of about 2,4-D is that it is pretty much half of what was in Agent Orange, which was sprayed over Vietnam to kill off the tree coverage, all the trees and the leaves, so that they could see the soldiers underneath, their enemy underneath the trees, and then, send down bombs and shoot them, and they couldn't hide. And unfortunately, that the exposure to chemicals affected Vietnamese people for generations. There are people today who are grandchildren of people who were sprayed, because our people were sprayed too. Our soldiers that were on the ground ended up being exposed to this as well. And there are people from both sides of the war who have grandchildren now that have birth defects. It's killed. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number right now, but it's close to, I think, in the millions, or at least hundreds of thousands of people. There were millions affected for sure, and hundreds of thousands sued and won lawsuits. But by the time they were actually paid out, according to one of my friends whose brother was a Vietnam vet, the amount that he got was like pennies on the dollar for Monsanto. It was like the interest that they made, over the years. So it really didn't impact them at all. But yeah, 2,4-D is very toxic.
And is it banned in other countries as well, Zen? I think it is.
I
Banned.
believe it is. I would
don't
not
have
know
those
how many.
stats.
Yeah, glyphosate is either restricted or banned in 60 other countries now. And I think Moms Across America had a big part to do with that when we found glyphosate in breast milk, because that's just not okay to have glyphosate in breast milk. So a lot of other countries made restrictions or bans after that finding. And we hope that glyphosate will be banned in the United States and all around the world as soon as possible. Definitely the first step needs to be that they stop spraying it as a drying agent, because this is how it's getting into our food supply. If I can share one other finding that we had, the highest level of glyphosate that we found was in Banza pasta. It's a chickpea pasta. It was the highest level that the lab has ever detected in human food. 2000
Wow.
Yeah, 2,963 parts per billion of glyphosate. And, according to the lab owner, this far exceeds the safety levels that are allowed or permitted in Europe, and also exceeds the levels that the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard, they have set, recommended daily limits 41 times higher than that.
Yeah.
So
That seems to me like that's almost like what's such a toxic overload in just eating that for one meal. Can you imagine somebody that, has that on a weekly basis, and what their immune system is
I
like?
would be very curious if anybody has been eating this on a daily basis. I would be really curious as to what your gut microbiome is like. You as a health coach, Carol, know that when somebody gets their gut microbiome messed up, it impacts their sleep, their moods, their ability to focus.
Their
They could get
brain.
immune issues, they could have rashes, they could be moody and irritable, and have all kinds of health. It causes nervous system damage. It causes reproductive damage. The exposure to glyphosate. It kills off sperm. It androgenizes baby girls. It causes liver and kidney disease at very low levels. So
And
if
cancer.
and can oh, so sorry, yeah,
A
cancer
carcinogen. Yeah.
and cancer. So something needs to happen immediately at Bonza. They need to contact their suppliers and find out, what is going on there. And all farmers everywhere, all food manufacturers need to insist everywhere that farmers do not use glyphosate as a drying agent or other toxic chemicals, 2,4-D, dicamba, paraquat. That we need to stop this practice of spraying toxic chemicals before harvest, whether they call it a pre-harvest drying agent or a pre-harvest weed killer, whatever it is for the purpose that they're saying that they're using it for, it needs to stop, because these residues are insanely high and harmful on our food supply.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're all working on that, and it just needs to happen sooner than later. So let's continue with some of these results. Then,
Yeah, so 21% of the samples were positive for glyphosate at levels of higher than 10 parts per billion, which is the EU threshold for acceptable glyphosate residue. So we're just saying that, there was a, that's not all of them, but there is a portion of them that were higher than what we would like to see for sure. And again, I said Dr. Don Huber said that 0.1 parts per billion of glyphosate is harmful and should be avoided, and 95.6% of the samples contain levels higher than the 0.1 parts per billion. So that's very concerning for people with gut issues, people especially with celiac who are trying to eat gluten-free. For them to be exposed to any level of glyphosate is going to only exacerbate their problem. In fact, doctors like Dr. Zach Bush and Dr. Nancy Swanson and Stephanie Seneff, PhD MIT scientist, have charts that are, and they're in our on our website, that show the correlation between celiac disease and glyphosate. It's a very close correlation. One could question if it's causal, that glyphosate might be causing or contributing at least to celiacs. Of course, there's genetic dispositions involved, but have we ever seen? So it's like 660 million people around the world now are eating gluten-free diets. It's 20 million people in America alone. Out of 300 million people, that's a pretty high percentage.
yeah,
And there's a lot more people who don't know they should be eating gluten-free, right?
right.
That's just the people who know that they are, need to be eating gluten-free. So these levels of glyphosate were very concerning. The lowest levels of glyphosate were in lesser evil popcorn and Edward and Sons crackers,
The rice crackers.
rice crackers. Yes. So I was
Yeah.
happy to see that because I eat a lot of those.
Yeah.
And then the chemicals, the pesticides, 2,4-D was the second highest, most prevalent pesticide. And unfortunately, King Arthur's gluten-free flour and Milton's sea salt crackers had the highest levels of all the pesticides combined, the combined amount. Unfortunately, Bob's Red's Mill also had 2,4-D, and King Arthur's flour. They both had 2,4-D on them.
Yeah. And
So,
those flours are not organic. They're just gluten-free, correct?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But what we found was when we tested, through this testing, was that the organic and gluten-free ones didn't have the lowest levels of glyphosate.
Yeah,
You
which is
would have
really disturbing.
Really disturbing. You would have thought that the organic samples would have had the lowest levels of glyphosate, and it was not the organic that had the lowest levels. Edwards and sorry, I have to click on the right information here. The Edward and Sons that we tested were just non-GMO.
Yeah.
And no, sorry, no, I'm sorry. Those might have been organic. Those two, the top two were they were organic. I'm so sorry. They were the glyphosate test results, they were organic, but the other ones that were organic weren't necessarily the lowest. Do you know what I mean? In general,
Yeah.
the category
Yeah.
of organic,
Yeah. Which
gluten-free.
we thought would be way different.
Yeah, we did. So, yeah, and then the pesticide test results as well. There was, the organic was still contaminated. And so we have a list of the summary of the results, Edwards and Sons being and Lesser Evil, both having non-detectable levels. Live G-free cornbread mix only had trace levels of glyphosate. And the other good ones were Made Good Strawberry Crispy Squares, Tinkyata Brown Rice Pasta, that's found at Trader Joe's, which is good. Udi's Soft White Sandwich Bread came out at a good level, a decent level, and Barilla Penne Pasta, Char's Plain New York Bagels, Whole Foods brand 365 Sandwich Bread, which is also low in pesticides, by the way. So I would feel pretty good about buying that bread. And it's also one of them that's one of the lowest prices out of all of the breads that we found was the Whole Foods brand 365 sandwich bread. And then Char Artisan Baker white bread, much more expensive, but that was number 10 as far as the lowest levels of glyphosate. So it's good to, celebrate the brands that had, decent or low levels of glyphosate.
I tell you, in looking at these results, one of my personal favorite crackers is Mary's seed crackers, because I like them because I avoid seed oils, and there's no seed oil in there. But tell us what we found in that.
The Mary's crackers, well, I don't have that right in front of me now.
But they did have glyphosate, though.
Yeah,
I
they did. Yeah,
remember
sorry,
that.
they did have glyphosate, but they weren't one of the top 5 most contaminated for
Right.
glyphosate. So I do have to
Right.
say that, but they did have glyphosate, yes, and that was part of what was upsetting, as I mentioned before, that the organic and gluten-free products like Mary's Gone Crackers still were contaminated.
Right.
So that's unfortunate. But the top 5 most contaminated for glyphosate were, as I said before, Bonza, the cavatappi pasta, Bob's Red Mill flour. I'm so sad about that. Flax for Life chocolate brownies, Pamela's Figgies and Jammies, the Mission Fig cookies, which are some of my favorite cookies. I'm so sad about that. And then Kind Kids Chewy chocolate chip bars. Those had the highest levels of glyphosate.
Wow.
Really unacceptable. I mean, come on, it's a $365 test, I believe, somewhere around that, to test for glyphosate. These companies need to be doing batch testing for glyphosate on the supplies before they make the products, and they need to start rejecting the sample, the supplies that are high in glyphosate. This is just what has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't want people to get discouraged and think that, well, it doesn't matter to eat whether we eat organic or non-organic. It still
Right.
matters.
It
And
still does, yes. And keep in mind, these samples that we found, there were, I think, 4 or 5 different organic brands that we tested. That's it. It wasn't across the board. It wasn't hundreds of brands. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the same with the gluten-free samples. We only tested one of each.
Yeah.
I mean, most scientific studies are thousands of each. So
Yeah.
these results are just indicative of what might be,
Right.
happening in the food supply. It is happening with these samples. That's what we can say. Is what happened with these samples. But it's something to be aware of and to speak up to our senators and our representatives about. Really, please send your senators and representatives the link to this testing. And as we covered in one of your last shows, the baby formula testing, and tell them this is an urgent situation. If we don't clean up the food supply, if they don't stop funding GMO monocrop agrochemical farming and start funding, which they have started, regenerative organic farming, but put more into that and transform this food supply, we do not have a very good future ahead of us. We have a lot of people who cannot procreate. We have a lot of people with autoimmune issues, a lot of people with cancer. I mean, this is an urgent issue now. We cannot wait another 10 or 20 years for it. So please, if you can, please take a moment to send this link to this information to your senators and representatives. We don't have the technology right now for the platform where you can just do a click and send an email, to your senators and representatives. It costs tens of thousands of dollars. So we don't have that right now, but you have the ability to just copy and paste some of this information, send an email to your senators and representatives. You can just type in, contact your representative or senators, and it's in usa.gov, and you can find out who they are and send them this information. And, to bring up the baby formula again, the reason why this is so important is because when we went to the FDA and talked about the baby formula, finding the heavy metals in baby formula, the head of human foods at the FDA said that they have made the request to Congress to be able to have the mandate to be able to regulate heavy metals in baby food. And then we also said, hey, what about baby formula too? And they made that request too, but they're waiting on Congress to approve and give them the ability to regulate for heavy metals in baby food and baby formula. So we need to contact our senators and representatives and tell them, hey, poison is not partisan.
Yeah.
You need to say,
Yeah.
I don't care if you're
I like
Republican
that. That's a
or
great,
Democrat, right?
right. Yeah.
You need to tell the FDA that they can do their jobs and regulate for heavy metals in baby food and baby formula. And, geez, while they're at it, how about pesticides? They're just not doing their job there. It's not
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. And to all our listeners, if you go to foodintegritynow.org, you can find this information on there, and I'll put a link to it. And you can also go to momsacrossamerica.org too, and you can find all these results. So,
Please do. Yeah,
yeah.
please do.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, we also tested for gluten as well, because we
Yeah.
suspected that some
This,
of these gluten-free foods were not free from gluten, because according to the National Celiac Association, 50% of the people who consume gluten-free products still have reactions. So we're like, well, there's got to be gluten in there then. If it's not the
yeah.
glyphosate, there's got to be something going on.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So 3 out of the 46 samples tested for higher than what the FDA allows for gluten in their gluten-free foods. And this was Simple Mills brownie mix, had 31 parts per 0.7 parts per million of gluten. Made Good soft baked double chocolate cookies had 56.1, and Simple Mills almond flour crackers had 59.4 parts per million. And these are far above the 20 parts per million that is allowed by the FDA. That's 20 parts per million. And 3 additional samples had levels of gluten above 10 parts per million, which is what the Gluten-Free Certification Organization recommends, is that it be below 10 parts per million. So they don't agree with the FDA's level of 20 parts per million. So those foods that were above 10 parts per million were Jovial Spaghetti, Go Macro Berry Granola Bar, and Char Pretzels. So people who have celiacs, I'm not a doctor, but it may be advisable for them to avoid those 6 brands that currently have levels that are concerning levels of gluten in them
Well,
as well.
I know several people who have true celiac disease, and they can't have any.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
the smallest amount can throw them off and for months. So this is really concerning. So, when you see this report, send a letter to the companies as well. send them
Yes.
an
Yeah.
email and say, hey, this is unacceptable and you need to do better.
Yeah, and we're in the process of doing that. Moms Across America is reaching out to all of these companies. So if they hear from you too, maybe they'll be more likely to respond. In the past, we have had no response from the fast food companies that we tested. The only response we had was that Chick-fil-A publicly said that they're no longer going to have their no antibiotics ever policy. They are going to allow antibiotics, and it's because there's so many sick chickens. Well, there's so many sick chickens because they're allowing the farmers to feed the chickens glyphosate sprayed grains, which destroys the
Right.
beneficial gut bacteria,
Yeah.
right? And allows for the proliferation of pathogenic gut bacteria. In that pathogenic gut bacteria is E. coli and salmonella, which gets the chicken sick. And then when they give them antibiotics to counter all that, they develop resistance to it. So then you've got superbugs chickens with superbugs that are then getting humans sick. So this whole problem goes all the way back to industrial, monocrop poison agrochemical farming. And
Yeah.
if we sort that out, if we say, no, we just need to use the methods that our great grandparents used for thousands of years, this problem will go away.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen.
Yeah. And it needs to happen sooner than later because
Yeah.
everything's getting so.
And I don't want to just say just what our great grandparents used. There's new technologies out there, like Robert Mondavi's son, Carlo Mondavi, or grandson, Carlo Mondavi, developed a machine called Monarch, which gets in between the grapevines and gets rid of glyphosate. I mean, sorry, gets rid of weeds without the use of glyphosate. And it's a chemical free sort of, not, I don't want to say robot device, but it might be considered that mechanical device that gets rid of weeds in between vines. So he is revolutionary. He is a revolutionary for the wine industry, the grape growers in the California region. And he did that essentially because of glyphosate killing off monarch butterflies, which is why he called the machine Monarch, and because of Moms Across America finding glyphosate in wine, especially 100% of the California wines that were tested.
Yeah.
So things are happening. People, the manufacturers can respond. They can get creative. They can develop new ways of dealing with pests and bugs and weeds. And we have faith. We have
Yeah.
faith in our farmers that they can do that.
Yeah.
If we didn't have faith, we would just be throwing our hands up and saying, forget it all, but we're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, it can be discouraging, but, this information is so powerful because, these companies too are driven by consumer demand, right?
Yes.
And if we're not buying the products because they're not willing to make a change, then, they're going to have to do something different. And that's
They
our
do.
hope.
And they can, and they have the R&D, they have the money, they're paying, most of these companies are paying their CEOs, maybe millions of dollars, definitely very high salaries.
Yeah.
And we believe a large portion of that needs to go to quality control and to making sure that, I mean, a heavy metal test is between $85 and $140. It's probably even cheaper for people who are doing batch testing, every week or every month. And the glyphosate testing, I don't know, somewhere between 375 to 350, per batch. So it's not going to break the bank. It's not $1,000 per test. And they simply need to make sure to do that testing and not add the price of the additional test cost to the end result of the food. I'm sorry, but the consumer cannot bear any higher prices in food
Oh,
right now. I was just in Austin, and for the first morning I had breakfast, I had a quinoa bowl with some cashews and some vegetables, and it was a grab and go. I wasn't even served. It was a grab and go from a refrigerator, and with a matcha tea, it was $25. So the next morning I had a juice. It wasn't even organic. It was an orange juice this big, and a power bar for $15.50.
oh my goodness.
Who can afford this? It's just ridiculous. So sorry, companies, but these CEOs and the top level executives need to take smaller, salaries, and you need to pass the savings on to the consumers if you want to keep selling your products. It's, the prices are just out of control right now.
They are. They are. They seem to really rise during COVID, and they just, never came down. They just are
Gee,
going
it's like
up
they
and up
took
and up.
advantage. Yeah, the Chinese
I think,
word for crisis is opportunity, and I think chaos. Is it chaos or is it the word for chaos is crisis and opportunity? I think it's like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
And so what I saw out of COVID was that there are a lot of people who saw an opportunity to make money.
yeah.
Right?
There's a
In
lot of
other
people
ways,
who got wealthy during COVID, and a lot of
yeah.
people who lost a lot during COVID. So
Yes.
there
Yeah.
was quite
Now
a
there was an opportunity for other people to be creative, people who lost
right.
something. I know a lot of people who lost their catering jobs or waiter jobs and they, or other types of, in customer service type jobs. And one guy became a history teacher online in Zoom. Another woman became a coach for people to do past life regression type things and
Yeah,
just exploded. I mean, just had so many customers that they never would have had before and expanded their careers. So there's opportunity in any type of chaos for everyone. Just be aware that there are going to be people who are making an opportunity, using that opportunity to make money
yeah,
at your disadvantage.
yeah. People who don't have integrity, or companies that
Yes,
corporations that don't have your best interest at heart. And I think we'll all agree that Bayer Monsanto is definitely one of those corporations that putting profit above people over and over again. So,
absolutely.
yeah, these results were really alarming to me. I'm gluten free and have been for
Me too.
years, but
Mhm.
I don't eat a lot of processed foods. I mean, I'm able to just make things from scratch and do it a little differently. But I do eat Mary's crackers, and I was happy that the Siete chips
Mhm.
fared pretty well. If I'm going
Yep,
to
they
have a
did.
chip, because they
Yeah,
don't.
across the board. I think we tested 2 or 3
Yeah.
products from
Oh,
Siete because
yeah.
they're so
You
popular.
tested their tortillas
Yeah,
too.
tortillas and their
Yeah,
chips. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know
and
if there was something else, but yeah.
they both fared pretty well. So
Yes,
yeah, that made me happy. So this, knowledge is power, and this is just great information. And I know that moms across America will continue to do different kinds of testing. You've already done so much, and informed so many people, about fast foods and breast milk
and
and
school lunches.
school lunches, baby
Yeah,
formula, and all of
yeah.
those results are on momscrossamerica.org. So if you've missed
Yes.
them, you can go on there. And I think I've interviewed Zen almost every time when
I
they come
think so.
with
Yeah.
these
And
results.
I want to thank our supporters. I want to thank, of course, our board, our team, and our supporters, especially Centner Academy, who supported this funded this batch of testing and, along with our other supporters. And organizations like Children's Health Defense tested before, it supported us before with the fast food and the school lunch testing. And then we have some anonymous individual donors that are just supporting us out of the love and grace of their heart. That nobody wants to get anything out of this. They just want a safe food supply for their children and grandchildren. And I'm very grateful for the people. Even if you can donate $10, to Moms Across America, it does make a huge difference. And moms, we don't just do one thing; we multitask. So your
Yeah,
money goes towards people who are multitasking and wearing 6 hats, and a very tiny budget. And we appreciate your support.
yeah. And I didn't say at the beginning, but Moms Across America's motto is Empowered Mom, Healthy Kids.
Yes, it
And
is.
the mission is to transform the food supply, but the words are to educate and empower mothers and others with actions and solutions to create healthy communities. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what we're here to do.
Yes, and I thank you, Carol, for being the board president for quite a long time, being involved
Yeah,
with
yeah,
us for many
yeah,
years, and we appreciate that so much. We cannot do the work without, a team that
yeah,
believes in what we're doing. So thank
yeah.
you, Carol.
Yeah, you're welcome. So thank you to our listeners. We just wanted to get this information out right away. Go check it out, momscrossamerica.org. And share this information with everyone you know. And thank you, Zen, for being our team leader and just doing fantastic work.
Thank you, Carol. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, take care. Bye.